Well, for years, March has commonly been Women's History Month in Iowa. In tonight's edition of We the People, KTIV's Larry Went introduces us to some of the many women who've become members of the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame, all thanks to their contributions to society.
More than 200 women have become members of the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame, like Academy Award-winning actress Donna Reed of Denison, Waterloo-born First Lady Lou Hoover, astronaut Peggy Whitson, Pulitzer Prize winner Susan Glaspell.
But there are many others you probably never heard of or know of their accomplishments until now.
Julia Addington was the first woman elected to office in Iowa and possibly the U.S. In 1869, she won a coin toss to become the superintendent of Mitchell County's 76 schools, building 17 more during her tenure. But her opponent challenged the outcomes.
Well, the Iowa court decided that there was a clear prohibition against Iowa women voting, but there was no mention of them holding office.
Karen Kudrowski is the director of the Carrie Chapman Catt Center for Women in Politics at Iowa State University. Chapman Catt devoted much of her life to the expansion of women's rights. Grinnell's Cornelia Clark learned photography from her father. She put her camera to use while traveling in Europe in the early 1900s, but she may best be known for the photographs of her cats Peter and Polly, training them to wear miniature suits and dresses and posing them with small-scale furniture.
Now, I have no idea how she managed to keep her cats still long enough to take their pictures.
Ada Hayden became the first woman to receive a doctorate at then Iowa State College, becoming a botanist and educator at the college herbarium that's now named for her. She photographed more than 40,000 specimens
and became a real advocate for the preservation of prairies.
Ola Babcock Miller broke the glass ceiling as Iowa's first female Secretary of State in 1932. She's credited with starting the Iowa State Patrol.
She realized that highway deaths were a serious problem in Iowa, so she created the State Highway Patrol, and she made them focus on highway safety.
There's a good chance you may have read a book written by Ladore, Iowa native Mildred Benson. She wrote hundreds of books, including dozens of the early Nancy Drew mysteries, under the pen name Carolyn Keene.
They depicted young girls and teenage girls doing things that boys normally did.
And Mason City's Deborah Ann Turner was the first African-American woman asked to join a sorority at Iowa State. She was also the first African-American certified by the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology.
Her career, mirrors Carrie Chapman Catt's, or at least intersects with it, right? She joined Carrie Chapman Catt's sorority at Iowa State University, and then she became head of the League of Women Voters, which was founded by Carrie Chapman Catt in 1920.
There is one man who made the list, the late Iowa Supreme Court Justice Mark Cady. He's honored for his landmark opinion overturning the state's ban on same-sex marriage. Larry Wentz, KTIV News 4.